Hello there. I'm Susie, and I'm going to read you some stories from this new book I just got. It's called Heart of Man, and it's Men's Stories for Women, edited by Bill Amontique. So, first one I'm going to read is called The Simple Truth of Her. It had been his father who had successfully urged Owen to get a practical, scientific education. Floyd Mackenzie's experience of the Depression had been that engineers were the last people to be fired. He had seen it happen. "The kid needs to latch on to something practical," he announced. "He's in danger of dreaming his brains away." The boy's brains could be, he reasoned, best engaged by machinery, if not for the giant knitting machines as long and heavy as freight cars, whose ill-rewarded servant he himself had been, then by some other kind of construction, bridges, dams, dynamos, whose indispensable utility was more obvious to the world than that of strict, honest accountancy. In a materialist age, matter must be trusted. An institution in far-off Massachusetts, a so-called Institute of Technology, offered Owen a scholarship. His being a student from a small rural school system in a middle Atlantic state helped his chances with the bestowers of admissions and student aid. He never saw MIT before he got there. The buildings were set back from an artificially broadened river, the Charles, across from a venerable city, Boston, that had held at the summit of a cut-down hill a sallow gold dome under which the Commonwealth was governed. In the early 50s, pre-war shabbiness still ruled Cambridge and Boston. Yet there were cities of youth, of students eager to make a fortune. Sailboats and rowing sculls rippled the river, a glittering sporting sight bluer than the Schuylkill had been black with coal silt. MIT was a male world, its administrators and instructors all exclusively male, and a number of them military men. Though the great post-war tide of veterans was receding, uniforms was still common on campus. Of 6,000 students, no more than 120 were women, and half of these were graduate students. Phyllis Goodhue stood out, then as one of the decided minority, outnumbered 50-1 in the endless corridors, floors of tan terrazzo and doors of frosted glass strictly numbered in black. Even the women's lavatory, 3-101 women. She was yet more noticeable among the springtime sunbathers in the great court, a large sheltered lawn between buildings 3 and 4 that overlooked the new segment of Memorial Drive, its double row of sycamores, and in their gaps the sparkling, playful Charles, and the rosy low profile of Black Bay. Most of the female undergraduates were not lovely, driven grinds with neglected figures and complexions, heads down in the hallway as they buckled the tide, trying to blend in with the boys, and Owen had to look twice at Phyllis to verify that she was lovely. True or false? Was twice necessary? No, from the start. Through that river-chilled, sleepless, and miserable first year in which his head was being stuffed with, among other rafts of basic data, introductory circuit theory, Kirchhoff's law, and Thevenin's and Norton's theorems, step function and impulse response, resonance phenomena, and conjugate impedances. Whenever Owen passed Phyllis in one of the thronged corridors, his own electromagnetic field changed, by an amount as subtle as crucial as the difference between dip and dt. There was a numbness only she inflicted. Her presence transformed the odd-shaped cement-paved spaces scattered among the buildings west of the Kendall Square subway stop, where bleary students loitered over gossip and cigarettes. She held her head erect on a long neck. Her straight hair, she mixed half blonde and half damp sand, was gathered into a ponytail in back with a rubber band. In the front, bangs came down to her pale eyebrows, which blended with her skin. Her brows and eyelashes were almost invisible. She wore no makeup, not even lipstick, and smoked poutingly, her cheeks deeply hollowed on an inhale, and exhale delivered with a certain dismissive vehemence, upward from the side of her mouth. In her offhand, underclad, the same dove-gray cloth coat, and dirty tennis sneakers all winter. Glamour she came to represent Cambridge for him, aloof, stoic, abstracted, pure. She looked like no girl from Pennsylvania, not even the fancy ones from the main line. Elsie Seidel, his high school girlfriend, the daughter of a country feed and hardware merchant, was always smartly turned out with polished penny loafers and ribbed knee socks and sweeping skirts and broad belts in the new look style, and tortoise-shell barrettes gleaming in the bouncy waves of her light brown hair. And plenty of lipstick, maroon lipstick that looked black in photographs and rubbed off on his mouth so that afterwards it stung to wipe it away with spit on a handkerchief. He didn't want his mother to see. His mother didn't want him to go with Elsie at all, though the girl was respectable, more respectable locally than were the Mackenzies, newcomers to his end of the county and to the school district. The district encompassed several valleys and included families whose first language was still Pennsylvania Dutch. Elsie herself spoke with a Dutchy care. Her voice seemed older than she was. There was a country simplicity to her, a well-fed glossiness. The first time they kissed, in the intermission of a dance, Elsie didn't make the anxious pushing mouth that Alice Stottlemyre had during the spin the bottle. But somehow her lips melt into his at warm, moist spot where their bodies joined. She was a short girl in her sweated-up taffeta dance dress, and he 6 feet tall at 17, the recent beneficiary of Mackenzie ranginess. She had to tug down at him to keep his face tight to hers. She wanted to kiss more, there behind a broken Coke machine, where the overhead fluorescent lighting was flickering. Her eager, small body molded itself to his. He remembered hearing how Carol Winowinski had let herself be fucked by Marty Knapfskinger, standing up in the narrow space between the rec hall and the hosiery mill, and saw that it could be done. Not that he and Elsie ever, in a word they never used between them, fucked. He was too smart for that, too anxious to avoid wasting his one life. He knew that fucking led to marriage, and he was not ready for that. In the heat and urgency of that first kiss, he recognized that she had her eye on him, as the phrase went. He had been an exotic, aloof arrival at the school, and somehow the idea of him had wormed its way excitingly into Elsie's head. So between them there was always this tilt, this unbalance. She had desired him before he knew what was up. He would afterwards associate Elsie with the inside of a car, its stale velour, its little dim dashboard lights, its rubber floor mats and chill metallic surfaces. Chill to begin with, after an evening of driving around, the heater made a cozy nook in the dark. On dates, they took his parents' stuffy pre-war Chevy. His father was generally back from Norris town by 6, and Owen was granted the car for the gasoline-powered roaming that it is. In common American wisdom, a teenager's right. At first, just kissing. On and on, eyes closed to admit behind sealed lids a flood of other sensations, an expansion of consciousness into a salty, perfumed space quite unlike the hushed and headlong vault of masturbation. In the dark seclusion between cool light sheets, his parents' muttering having died away, he would seem for some seconds to stand on his head, having discovered with his left hand a faithful mechanism, impossibly sweet, a clench that took him back to infancy, its tight knit of nervousness before memories overlaid the bliss of being in that private darkness. Had come another seeker, and what was being found, clumsily yet unstoppably, was a core self explored by another consciousness. Elsie was both witness and witnessed. Her eyes were the wet, honey-tinged brown of horehound drops. By the particles of light that entered through the windshield, he saw the dark dents of her dimples when she smiled, and the side of one eyeball gleam as she studied him across a gap that closed in a few seconds. Huddled beside him on the front seat, a bench seat in that era, with her back gouged by the knob of the window crank and her calves and ankles roasted by the heater, she seemed cupped to receive him, a nest of growing permissions. With each date she gave him an inch or two more of herself, and he could claim as his henceforth. There was no taking back these small territories. Beyond kissing, there was so much to touch, so many hooks and tricks among the catches and aromatic coverings. There, in the shelter of the car, which sometimes became her car, for, though a year younger than he, she had also had her driver's license, and when his poor old family Chevy was under overnight repair, or commandeered for some adult evening errand, she would bring a car of her family's, her mother's green Dodge or even her father's new deep blue Chrysler with its V8 engine, to pick him up at the farmhouse where his mother had not been without a struggle, excepting that Elsie had become his girl, whatever that meant in the world embraced on a new half-century. Some of those evenings, when Elsie did the driving, pulling up in an impressive machine, she would be invited into the little house's front parlor. Smartly dressed in this setting of declaring geniality, Elsie spoke to Owen's mother with a lively courtesy. Her honey-brown eyes flashed. Her scarlet lips smiled. Uneasily standing by in a flannel shirt whose sleeves were too short and scuffed lace shoes that looked oafish compared to Elsie's polished penny loafers, Owen felt like a baton being passed. A baton. When the young people these social observances discharged achieved freedom in a car of Elsie's, it seemed perverse, after the movie or the miniature golf was behind them and they had found a parking spot, to have her seated on his left instead of on his right. Come at this way, she felt like a strange girl, with whom he must begin from scratch. Their chins and mouths made angles opposite from the usual, and his hands coped with reversed roots. Should we switch?" she asked, when he remarked on this strangeness. Her voice came out breathier, lower in her throat, and the polite Dutch-flavored voice she had used with his mother and the teachers at school. Her lipstick had already begun to smear and flake. Her face was waxily lit by street lamp half a block away. They sometimes parked in a hidden place he knew from his childhood walks at the back of the Dairy Queen lot on Cedar Top. Other times they would park up by Shale Hill, near what had been the Victory Gardens on a dirt road made by recent developers. Always, as the scope of her permissions widened, he searched for even safer spots, where the police would never come up and shine flashlights in their faces, as had once happened. Behind the long, low sheds of the old farmer's market, as she sat high behind the wheel of her father's expensive car, her mussed-up hair caught fire in stray loops and strands from the distant street lamp. "Let's," he agreed, "if you don't mind my sitting behind your father's wheel." "I don't mind, Owen. I don't like it poking me in the ribs all the time. I don't see how you can stand it." "Elsie, when I'm with you, I don't notice such things. Here I go. I'll get out and you slide over." Thrusting himself into the public space outside the automobile where adult morality peered in from the stars, he opened and shut the Chrysler's passenger door and scuttled around the broad chrome bumper and white-walled rear tires, hunched over, for he had already had an erection. Even behind his fly it felt scarily, as if it might snag on something, until he settled behind her father's steering wheel, which wore a suede cover. The tang of new car smell was warmed into freshness by the heat of their bodies. As he slid across the front seat, wide enough for three, into the space where she huddled, the far street lamp illuminated her blurred face, and a small pearl earring in the fuzzy wool of her short-sleeved Angora sweater. She let him slide the sweater up, and sneak a finger into her bra, and stroke the silky skin there, the gentle fatty rise of it. Though Elsie was plump, her breasts were small, as if still developing. When he had advanced When he had advanced to taking off her bra and pushing the sweater way up, her chest seemed hardly different from his own. A breast of hers in a hand felt as delicate as a tear bulging in his eye.